Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the introduction as well. It's a pleasure to be here. I do that on a regular basis. This is really my job. So I'm in a classroom full of people, and now I'm here in front of this august audience. My name is Dr. Asma Salman. I do represent the American University in the Emirates. I'm an associate professor there. I've been engaged with the university for the past 8 years. And thanks to Murtaza, now I am also associated with the London School of AI. I will be talking about the role of blockchain in digital economy, and it might partially answer your question that you had asked about. Why are we not including the people who do not have access to really the formal infrastructure? Of course, we're in the UAE, and Dubai will be the first city fully powered by next year on blockchain. Like somebody else had also mentioned, they want to really have to be the superpower for AI. So definitely blockchain fuels into that. This was something that was said a couple of years ago by the Crown Prince. And also there were a couple of documentaries, some articles about that as well. So I know that a lot of people have spoken about so much of the technological revolution, the digital change, and also how we are a part of that entirely digital society. What have we done? How are we contributing without knowing that we're part of it? So when we talk about the technological revolution, it's not mobility. Sometimes people might disagree with me, not big data, not machine learning, maybe not AI either. It is the blockchain putting everything together. And there are so many examples that have actually included people who have no access to the real life banking industry or the financial institutions. I know that there was a gentleman who had asked about finance, and I might just touch upon that as well. There's so much going on here. We just need to make sure that our society and the economy that we're living in, we have a digital economy, not for the people who already have the access and make it better for them, but for the people who do not have the access and how we can include them. So what is really blockchain? I know that a lot of you already know about that. There's a lot that's been said about it already. So it's really an updated record of who really holds what. To really understand the power and the things that it can do, it is basically distinguished with 3 main things. I know somebody talked about cryptos, I know Asif did, and he wants to stay away from them. I am completely pro-crypto. So it's completely different. I'm on the other side. And I know that I teach finance, and it's kind of taking away everything that I've learned over the number of years and saying that that was different, and this is the new change. I'm going to touch about that as well. The Bitcoin currency, the specific blockchain that underpins it, and of course the idea of blockchains in general. This was also published in the Time Machine Economist back in 2015. Like Asif had said earlier on, that really time is flying. And we need to understand, embrace it before it's too late. And I do feel cryptos are a huge part of it. Sometimes, I know the last slide, touching on also, you can well imagine how closely I was listening to you, Asif. So one of the last slides that Asif had touched also was what had happened when there was no internet. Now from the internet of use, quite literally, we are entering the internet of value. What can we get while we are on the internet? It's no more about only documentation. It's about what we can earn. We have so many examples where people have made billion-dollar industries through just by being on the internet and making use of it through value. Now, I know that if I go back in the time, there was the barter system. Of course, the coins came in, the notes came in, the plastic money came in, and then, of course, now we have money over the digital arena, which is the internet. A lot of times my students, they ask me, because I teach both at the grad and the undergrad level, that how can you trust them? What's the trust factor? Where is this building? What happens around it? We're going to touch that as well. So the second generation of the internet is really the internet of value. What are we getting from here? So these are some of the examples for the internet of information. Of course, we go all of here. We have an email, for example. We're going to send an email, but we're going to retain a copy of it as well. The other person, the sender, has the copy, and the receiver gets a copy as well. The idea is for the internet of value that if I'm transferring $20, that you get the $20 and I don't have them anymore. So how can we do that over the internet without involving banks or the financial institutions? I know I might get a question where they say that there's a lot of, let's say, the kind of activities which are prohibited are happening over the internet because of the cryptocurrencies. That might be true, but that also happens with all the legal organizations. I started this research, let's say 5 years ago, when I was part of a book launch, which was by Don Tapscott for Blockchain Revolution. And that is really, this was back in 2015. So that was really the time that this all emerged as something really new, but something that had a lot of value. Now, Norway is one of the countries where they want to have all the financial statements. Somebody was talking about finance and the role of finance as well. They want to put everything, all the financial statements on blockchain because they want to reduce not only the redundancy, but also the fraudulent or the embezzlement of cash or the frauds that can happen. Just imagine your auditors are coming in and you just can't change anything. So it's just there. So I do feel that we are in the era of the digital disruption, where we're saying that what if there were only internet of information, but also there is an internet of value, some kind of vast global ledger running millions of computers and available for almost everybody, where everything from money to music could be stored, moved, transacted with a lesser amount of money. It's the same thing. We have so many financial intermediaries in between, banks being the biggest one. I do have some examples where I'm just going to tell you how much of a fee we can reduce. 98% of the fee that can be reduced for any of the transactions that are happening. Now that's huge amount of money, huge amount of money. Financial intermediaries play a role. That's how we know the world works. Now there's a group of people that have come together and they're saying that, well, we can take care of ourselves. We can take care of our money, and we're going to take control over it. Banks don't like it. The Federal Reserve doesn't like it. Nobody likes it. Because we're telling them, you're going to be out of job, not us. They're the ones who are going to be out of job. So we're actually telling them that we can do their job better. So what will happen without all these powerful intermediaries? Now, of course, they're powerful. We're trying to move an entire setup. We're trying to move an ideology that existed since 200 years. There's no more data behind that. I mean, before that, maybe Murtaza is going to help me from Data Pillar to get that data, right? So, free flow of money, of trust, of value. Who controls it? Who owns it? And how can we control it? How can we benefit from it? Now, the idea is that if we are putting money into a bank, let's say any bank in any country, they charge us to take care of our money. We're telling them we can do that. We have these soft wallets, hot wallets, cold wallets. We're going to put our own cryptos there. We're going to make a portfolio. And we are the ones who are going to take charge of it. That is where we have the inclusion of people who are not part of the society, that are the neglected part of the society. See, people who are in far-flung areas, and if I take the example of Africa or Southeast Asia, they don't care how the money reached them, as long as it did. That's the main purpose for them. The same goes for refugees. Now, the UN Food Program has used blockchain, and they are doing their own way of using it in a way to identify the retina of the eye for all the refugees, and then they can take their sack of rice and go away, and so it can be controlled, and it's verified, and the data is there as well. So you can well imagine that it can play, somebody said at the beginning, it can play a huge role in many, many, many industries. So this is what happened back in 2008 actually, but it started 2009. So every 10 minutes, of course, Satoshi Nakamoto, there's a huge debate about it a couple of weeks ago when somebody came out and said that, okay, I am Satoshi Nakamoto, and this is what I plan to do. So we don't know yet. There's a lot of mystery around it. It's one of those suspense thrillers, So we're talking about digital money. Let me give you a bit of an idea between the digital money and the cryptos. Now, cryptos, of course, some of the countries are putting some rules and regulations there. There's certain legislations that are going on there. But digital money, for sure, is something that is going to be backed by the government. Now, let me give an example between two leading central banks, one of them being Saudi, and the other is the UAE. They have released their own digital currency, and they want to trade within their central banks through it. So you can see that acceptance coming in, even in these societies where somebody said that data was not used or not very open at the moment. But still, they are making this change within themselves to see how much of a cost cutting can it give them annually. Now, Dubai has launched one. There is a digital currency called Mcash. By the name of Emirates, it's EM Cash. So that has also been, there's a company in the UK who's been helping them create this. The trust protocol. So we talked about that a little bit a while ago, that for the first time, people want to trust each other or can trust each other, transact peer-to-peer, and trust is established by collaboration and cryptography and, of course, coding. So we see all these youngsters coming in. I just read yesterday a 15-year-old who's coding and who's got a blockchain solution for drug abuse in Canada. So there's so many things that could be done, and really you just need to be over the internet to create that value out of it. Blockchain is the second revolution after the internet. That's what a lot of people are saying. That's where we talked about the jobs. That's how people are viewing it right now. That's why there are so many people coming in with those solutions. Now, that is what it will do for transactions, what internet had did for information. So, anybody does remember what was the first, really, the first search engine that came in? Yes? Asif? Okay, so before that, so what would you call a Google? It's a website for, okay, so we just have a terminology saying Google it, right? So we have that. So before that, where would you find all your information? On which website? Do you have an idea? Netscape was correct, but do you have an idea which website was that before Google? Right, so those are all the search engines, that's correct, but before that? Long, long ago? Good one. So that was Alta Vista. It's Alta Vista. And believe it or not, Alta Vista could not Alta Vista itself. Right? There was no information over the internet. Internet is all about information. There was absolutely no information about Alta Vista on Alta Vista. So you can well imagine how far we have come from that period of time. I was still a teenager, okay? It's not that old. All right, how does it work? So the assets, the digital assets like money or music and everything in between, which is not stored in a central place, but can be distributed to a global ledger using the highest level, of course, for the cryptography. When a transaction is conducted, it is posted across millions of computers, and the Bitcoin miners have massive computing power. I recently, well, not very recently, 2 years ago, I published an article about Bitcoin. Of course, at that point of time, there was a lot of backlash going on in Bitcoin. So I got a lot of phone calls from around the world, and there was one newspaper who contacted me saying, what have you written, and why are you pro this, and this doesn't work this way, and so on and so forth. And he ended up telling me that because there is a huge amount of computing power, it is not sustainable in the long run, which is not true. If you see the statistics, it only uses 4% of the electricity of what you use to actually print money. So people really do not do their statistics before they come in and make those claims, because, of course, there's a lot of controversy going around it, and they want to sort of be the opportunists at the time. So now, every 10 minutes, of course, and there's a lot of forks coming in for the Bitcoin as well, and for the cryptos as well. There's lots and lots of cryptos. When I started researching, there were a couple of hundreds. There are more than 2,500 now available. And those cryptos are giving people who have no accessibility to a real bank. Of course, if you have to approach a bank for a bank account, they ask you so many IDs, and then where you're working, and then all those sorts of things. I'm not sure if you have a banker in the house. All right, maybe he's not going to like me too much, but that's the formal way, and that's the policies that drive it. But the cryptos give you that power. And we can see that. I'm going to give you a bit of an example just after this slide as well. So in case of Bitcoin blockchain, it would mean a Bitcoin and it will be rewarded. Somebody spoke about IoT and smart contracts. Again, it was Asif, I think. See, Asif? So those smart contracts, of course, Ethereum is one of the best things that work for the smart contracts. So each of these blockchains, whatever you're using it for, become that. So blockchain was that underlying technology that brought the cryptos. So sometimes there was a confusion back in the day. So 10 years ago when it was launched, that, okay, Bitcoin and blockchain are the same thing. Whereas they're not. So the block is linked to previous blocks, and then the previous, and so on. So it makes a change. It's time-stamped and sealed. This is just one blockchain technology and a crypto payment mechanism that, of course, was being used. It's just a very generic one. There's so many websites available now, and a lot of payments can be done over there as well. So removing, I also read that somebody would be talking about the circular economy maybe later in the day. So we're moving from towards an alternative economy, which is not a 9-to-5 anymore. Very, very project-based, gig-based economy. You know, lots of influencers coming in. I've got a 12-year-old at home. She thinks she's an influencer. So I don't want to upset her by telling her, well, there's a lot of work that goes behind it, right? So there's a lot of change that has come in. And I see that because I work with students, the youngsters, and I see that how the job market has changed, especially in this part of the world. So we're moving towards pretty much a gig economy. A lot of times you would see on LinkedIn people saying that, okay, we're a freelancer, I'm a freelancer. Now that doesn't mean you're working for free, it's just that you're not engaged with one organization. You're engaged with a couple of organizations at the same time. So I'm sure everybody's seen this before. So everything's on the internet of value. Well, Uber and Kareem had the biggest merger in history. It happened here a couple of months ago, $3-something billion, very, very huge. And the CEO for Kareem also comes from the same country as I do. I'm from Pakistan. And he was a Stanford graduate, and he was the one who created Kareem over here. And of course, Alibaba, Jack Ma, there's no inventory there, and he just retired on his 55th birthday, and he has given the reins of this huge empire to a successor. So that's also one way of looking at it. By example, just few applications for the blockchain in terms of title deeds. Now, I'm sure that we've all heard that, you know, when you have property in your name and somebody passes away, it's a messy situation. You own it, but you can't prove it. You have it. It's not in your name changed, somebody else. So much stuff going on. So for title deeds, the case of Republic of Honduras, using blockchain, you've just put the name over there. Of course, a lot of municipalities would be redundant after this use. This case became one of the biggest in history to have the most title deed cases solved through blockchain in Honduras. For the remittances, now this is $600 billion US dollars. And there is a fee attached to it. Just think about Western Union, think about whatever. They have a fee attached to it. If you are sending money through an online portal, which is not a bank, which is not a financial institution, then you can reduce the fee by 98%. It's a huge amount of money. Just imagine, for $600 billion as a remittances, you're cutting the fee by 98%. That's a huge amount of money. Now, the data should be virtually also owned by you. Now, of course, there's a lot of data. Data is the new oil. That's what they say. That is the amount of, it is going to have a price very, very soon for your own self, for your own data, for people to have access. So, have you heard about the blockchain chicken? Anybody? All right. So this picture is basically from Bloomberg. So what this tells you, so this is a bit about supply chain now. How blockchain can really revolutionize the whole supply chain industry. So this blockchain chicken was on Bloomberg, and it was actually in Walmart in Canada. And what it does is it actually traces back to where the chicken was born, what it ate, was it organic, what kind of food it had, where it traveled from, where it came, where was it slaughtered, the slaughterhouse, everything. Quite literally everything. I'm not sure if they can identify who the dad chicken or the mom chicken was, but everything else is there. So when you're going and you want to buy something, just imagine that we have those aisles with organic food. Here you have an aisle with blockchain-related products. When we're talking about having a very inclusive economy, what we really need to do is make sure that we protect the rights through the immutable records. Now, actually, for me, as a trained accountant, before I actually did my PhD in finance, I was always taught that whatever is the word of mouth, because as an accountant, although the job may be redundant soon, like you said about the auditor, I've also been an auditor back in Pakistan in late 90s. One of the thing is that as an auditor, as an accountant, whatever has been said is the final thing. So that, because otherwise it makes or breaks the company. You have to give a report as an auditor. So when you're talking about immutable records, that's exactly, we're going back to the basics and we're saying that, okay, once it's done, it's immutable. We're not going to change it. That's how it's going to stay. Creating a true sharing economy. I know that people who would be in the United States, they know there's a carpool lane, people are sharing and whatever. A lot of stuff is going on. They have such packages coming out for Kareem as well over here. So many other stuff, so many. There's a company which actually shares bicycles. So, there's so much going on. Ending the remittance ripoff. This is where I'm talking about the fee structure. Western Union and all the exchanges which charge you a bit of a fee for some remittances to go home. That's a huge amount of money. Enabling citizens to monetize their own data. Ensuring compensation for the creators of value. Now, YouTube doesn't have its own data or content. Neither does all of those social networking websites. So you should have, you should be given at least that amount of monetization over it because you're the content creator behind it. The future is happening right now. The blockchain-based IDs and identities are already they've started in Eastern Europe. Blockchain passports are there. They also want to start something like you should just be an e-citizen and you don't have to be associated with a country. I'm not sure, maybe in another 20 years that happens. Smart contracts, of course, e-government, and lots of blockchain projects. Thank you very much.